expulsion occurred. And of a population that included Mexican nationals, many of them that had lived in this country 20, 30 years. But increasingly important is the 60% or more of American citizens of Mexican descent. In other words, what occurred here was unconstitutional deportation.
Well, Professor Valderrama, I'm wondering if you could talk also about the role of the press at that time in stirring up anti-immigrant fervor, because this began during the Hoover administration and then moved on into the Roosevelt administration. What was the role of the press as well?
Well, the role of the press is significant, but it is also reflecting the larger American society at this time as well. The key notion that the press puts forward is that a Mexican is a Mexican. There is no distinction in terms of residents in this country. As I mentioned earlier, many of them had lived in this country 20, 25 years. Most of them were documented. Most of them had papers. And that their children that were born in this country were U.S. citizens. No distinctions made. And that is accepted in this society and serves as a way of looking at the population that even though they had contributed during better times to the economic prosperity of the United States, that now that's not recognized. They are the other, so to speak.
I want to turn to Ignacio Pina, who lived in rural Idaho. When sheriffs came to his house, he took somebody in custody in the summer of 1931. His parents had lived in the United States for some 25 years. He was about to enter first grade. We're taking this from a film called A Forgotten Injustice. A now elderly Pina describes what happened that day.
My mother was cooking and hand-making flour tortillas. I remember we were eating them with melted butter. Then all of a sudden they arrived. They pointed their guns at us. One officer was standing outside. The other one was inside, and they said, "Come on, let's go, come on." And my mother would ask, "Where?" "No questions, come on, out."
No question. Come on, out.
They took us to the fields where my father was working. They grabbed him too, and then they filled up the other car with Mexicans that were working there as well.
In
Pocatello, Idaho, they put us in jail. We were in jail for 6 or 7 days. I was 6 years old, and as a kid I could not understand why we were in jail if we were not criminals. My father was in one cell, and my mother was in another. One with me, my 3 sisters, and my 2 brothers. But I could not understand why. Even when we were in the train on our way to El Paso, Texas, I wondered, where is this train going? What's going to happen with us? There were about 5 cars with lots of Mexicans, lots of families. We were so young, but I remember looking around at the people. They looked so sad. Because many were suffering the same things we were facing. They were kicked out too. They did it so we couldn't come back, even the ones that were born here like us. They didn't let us take anything with us, not even our birth certificates.
Not even our birth certificates. That was Ignacio Pina. Professor Valderrama, you knew Ignacio Pina. Can you tell us more about this story and how typical it was?
Well, Mr. Pina called me after we had the hearings in Sacramento. We conducted extensive interviews, and getting to meet his family, his son shared with me that he no longer has the nightmares that this man was experiencing well into his 80s because he was able to share his story with us. Mr. Pina, who's recently deceased, became an activist in regards of the Apology Act and the erection of the memorial here in Los Angeles. And I think it shows that an individual that suffered with this throughout his life, that even had nightmares as a senior citizen about that, became an activist and shared that story multiple times to the press, to the television, on and on, with the conviction that, as many of the other survivors, that this not happen to anybody else. When he said that, and the other survivors, not to happen to anybody else, he just doesn't mean people of Mexican descent or Latino descent. Rather, what he's saying is anybody else, and especially those that are American citizens. It shouldn't happen. We do not have unconstitutional deportation.
And Mr. Valderrama, you specialized in the mass deportations of the 1930s, but that was not the last of these deportations, right? In the 1950s, there was Operation Wetback under the Eisenhower administration, and of course, during the Bush years and into the Obama years, there were the mass deportations that occurred. It seems every time there is an economic crisis in the United States, the first reflex is to start mass deportations of the other as the society begins to declare them.
Exactly, Juan. You're right on target with that we do have these cycles. What behooves American society to understand is that this early period that I've studied, the early 20th century, and the Great Depression, which is the most severe economic crisis of the 20th and the 21st century, is the fact that at that time develops this ideology, this set of beliefs, this way of thinking of the Mexican Latino population, that somehow they're not part of our society, that they are, many of them are criminals, many of them appear to be on welfare, that somehow, some way they cannot become part of our society. And I think what is especially important to keep in mind for your listeners is that as we experience the nightmare of today, the crisis of today, which is different, that same ideology, that same way of thinking is still in action today.
I wanted to go, Professor Valderrama, to your late co-author, Raymond Rodriguez. This is Rodriguez speaking at...
I think that's enough. I think you have enough information on what happened at that time. So I don't know, Annie, I don't know, what do you think? If you want to share something, or we can continue, because I'm gonna link this now with what is happening today. And I don't know, how do you feel? If someone of you want to share right now, or do you want to continue?
Well, maybe if somebody has something they want to ask or share, they can raise it. I know we were having a little chat. I got kicked off briefly, but we were having a chat about the fact that 60% of the people deported were U.S. citizens, and 2 million people. Like, that's just unbelievable. So I don't know if anybody has anything they want to say, or should Adriana just keep on going?
I would like to say that the role of the press is so important then and now, and I hope that what you are doing will make big waves to complement what's not been done there.
Thank you. Thank you. So let me continue. I will share.
I also think, Adriana, just to clarify, I think it's really important to clarify that it doesn't matter who's in power, Democrats or Republicans.
Yes.
I think that's a misconception. I think that people think that a Democratic president is a friend of the Latinos. That historically has not been the case, and I think what we just saw is very clear. So,
and actually, actually it's the opposite. With Republicans president, we have had amnesty and better conditions for Mexicans. So I think in the case is that sometimes we are just a tool for Democrats to have content, but not acting in reality.
Yeah, and while you're getting this next thing up, Adriana, I just wanted to point out, and then I think Astrid wants to say something, but I just was going to say, I think it's important to look at the ideology is what I think they were getting at, was this sense that for some reason they decided that Mexicans and Latinos in general, but especially Mexicans, could not be part of the society. I think that's what we see continuing today. Sorry, Astrid, go ahead.
No, I wanted to say that it's really important to keep those facts in mind, that even Mexican Americans, U.S. citizens were deported, because that is something that when we come back, decades later, it's still in the, consciousness of the Latino population here. And it has an impact, in the things that are going on. And I quite agree. I mean, both, political parties have not served extremely well, the Latino population.
Thank you, Astrid. I'm gonna share now just part of this piece.
The Trump administration has moved to reopen the cases of hundreds of illegal immigrants who were given a reprieve from deportation under President Obama. Government data and court documents examined by Reuters, as well as interviews with immigration lawyers, illustrate one of the first concrete examples of the crackdown promised by Trump, and is likely to stir fears among tens of thousands of illegal immigrants who thought they were safe from deportation. Reuters immigration correspondent Micah Rosenberg.
So we started reporting this story because we heard from immigration lawyers that they had cases that had been administratively closed by the government, which basically for their purposes were over. They didn't have to think about them again. And then they suddenly started receiving motions from the government saying they wanted to put these cases back on the court calendar. And for some lawyers, this was very surprising because they didn't know of any circumstances that had changed in their client cases.
In 2011, President Obama initiated a policy change to pull back from deporting immigrants who had formed deep ties in the United States and who were considered to be no threat to public safety. But President Trump undid those policies in January, and now immigration lawyers are seeing the widening effect of that executive order.
The Trump administration has said that they want to focus on criminal aliens. That is their priority. But in the language of Donald Trump's executive order, which was signed in January, it says no classes of immigrants in the country illegally should be exempt from deportation. So we spoke to one attorney who had a client whose case was closed administratively in 2015. And she just a few months ago got a motion that the government was seeking to put that case back on the calendar. She was confused as to what was happening, had some conversations with ICE, and they said that there had been an arrest in El Salvador on the woman's record. So she went back through her file and saw that the arrest had been for the woman selling pumpkin seeds outside the airport as an illegal street vendor. And that was something that had been disclosed in the immigration application from the minute she crossed the border.
One immigration lawyer telling Reuters that the government used to only reopen cases if the person was a threat to public safety, but now they are, quote, opening cases just because they want to deport people.
Thank you. I'm going now just to share with you, and I'm sure you're aware of this, but it's just what the last declaration of the President of the United States about immigrants, and he was referring to Mexicans and well, to Latinos, I mean in general, immigrants. And then I just want to clarify that he later tell that he was referring to gangs, but at the beginning it wasn't like that. But I just wanted to share because that's gonna give you a good sense of what it's the discourse right now, which is repeating what has been happening with Mexicans and deportations of Latino. Because the other thing that I want to I don't know, to address is that a lot of Americans, and now Astrid and Fabiola and Diana maybe can help me, but a lot of Americans, maybe not here in DC, because in DC the Salvadorians are the majority and not Mexican. I think it's one of the New York, Florida, and DC. There are other groups that are the majority, but among Americans, when they are referring to Mexicans, they are referring to Latinos. They are not distinction. Now we know why, because of the numbers, but sometimes when they are referring to Mexicans, and I think that it's even happening in President's mind, he's talking about Mexican, but he means the Latino in general. And because of our majority, it's that why we are on the top of the mind of everybody. So again, sorry. Can you see it?
People coming into the country are trying to come in. We're stopping a lot of them. But we're taking people out of the country. You wouldn't believe how bad these people are. These aren't people. These are animals. And we're taking them out of the country at a level and at a rate that's never happened before. And because of the weak laws, they come in fast. We get them, we release them, we get them again, we bring them out. It's crazy. The dumbest laws, as I said before, the dumbest laws on immigration in the world. So we're going to take care of it. We'll get it done. We have people coming into the country trying to come in. We're stopping a lot of them. But we're taking...
Sorry. So this is, I was going to share much more material like this one, but I maybe just want to share some small, like really short video about a mom being deported right now. It happened, I think, a few weeks ago. And this is the only piece I'm going to show you because a lot of deportation are going like this one. We don't know specifics about the mother or wherever, but I think this, with this piece, you will feel how are Latinos feeling and how is the deportation taking place right now. So give me 1 second and I'll share it with you. Sorry, it's a little loudy, but that's, and I can stop whenever you want because there's a lot of screaming and things like that. I'm going to stop there because, I mean, you will have a feeling it's a mom being separated of their daughters from her daughters. And at the end of this video, the people who was there is asking them, do you have an aunt or a cousin or someone who can you go with and be part of a new home or whatever, and they tell, no, we don't have anybody. So that's how things are going on right now. This is not an isolated case. I mean, this is extreme in terms of the feeding of the daughters, but this is what is happening. The separation of families, deportation of people, like as we heard in the video of Reuters, I think, about people selling some popcorns or whatever in the movies, outside the movies without permits. So these are mainly the crimes the Latinos are being deported for. And I don't know, I have just a piece of that. This is the last piece I think we are going to share, because we will not have enough time to share all the rest of the material that I have for you. And this one is about the mental health of the Latinos right now with all these situations. So if you can please help me to read it.
Earlier this year, the American Psychological Association released their annual Stress in America survey results. Over the years, the survey has focused on various concerns and issues that impact stress among children and adults. The focus of the APA's 2015 Stress in America survey this year focused on the role of discrimination on stress.
Research has consistently shown that discrimination and racism impacts mental health functioning and stress among people from ethnic minority groups. APA 2016, the Stress in America survey highlighted that stress levels have increased in the past year, that most adults reported that stress had a negative impact on their mental and physical health. Furthermore, the survey noted that Hispanic and Latino Americans reported the highest levels of stress.
According to the findings, Latinos reported the highest stress across 4 major sources of stress, including money, employment, family responsibilities, and health concerns. As you might expect, stress also impacts how we interact with others. According to the survey, 46% of parents report losing their patience or yelling at their children. Whereas the survey focused on discrimination and stress among adults, studies have also shown that discrimination impacts stress among children and adolescents. For example, a recent study among Hispanic adolescents found that stress and discrimination was associated with depression symptoms. Cervantes, Cardoso, and Goldbath, 2015. The researchers, Cervantes et al., emphasized the need to study the cultural effect, the example of anti-immigration attitudes on Latinos, because studies have shown that they suffer from higher depressive symptoms than other ethnic groups. Specifically, immigration, discrimination, family economics, and family drug stress were tied to depressive symptoms.
Of more concern.
Of more concern is the fact that.
Go ahead.
Of more concern is the fact that ethnic minorities, including Latinos, often don't seek professional help to address mental health concerns or stress. The survey notes that 1 in 5 adults never engage in stress relief activities, and the most common methods for coping with stress among Latinos included listening to music and using prayer.
Thank you.